Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gina Ford. I'm the Communications Director for Prince George's County Executive Angela Also Brooks. This is certainly an exciting day in Prince George's County, and after a long process, the County Executive has selected our next Chief of Police. So first you'll hear from County Executive Also Brooks, who will introduce her selection. Following her, you'll hear from County Council Chairman Calvin Hawkins, and then finally, of course, our selection.
Good afternoon, everyone. So happy to be here this afternoon. This truly is a wonderful day in Prince George's County. We have, over the last several months, I want to thank this community. They have been so patient in allowing me to conduct a process to select the next police chief for Prince George's County. And I have taken a great time and thought in this process, because it is my belief that this appointment is one of the single most appointments that I will make during my time as county executive. And so we conducted a comprehensive national search for our next chief of police. And this process has involved significant community input. We used a talent acquisition firm that assisted us in that search. And early on in the process, we sent out a survey. We sent it out widely throughout our community, and that survey was open for 6 weeks to help us learn more from our constituents about what they wanted to see in the next chief of police. And through that, we learned several things. First, our residents identified the top issues for public safety in our county, and the top were trust and engagement with the community, as well as more personal connections with the police officers serving our neighborhoods. In addition, we did ask our residents what the top qualities were that they wanted to see in their next chief of police, and the three included taking ownership of the department's actions, having a high level of integrity, and demonstrating a sincere concern for the community. Finally, we asked what kinds of experience the next chief should have, and the top experiences, by and large, included a track record of building and maintaining community relationships, an ability to develop and implement innovative solutions, and have management experience in a jurisdiction similar in size to Prince George's County. The talent acquisition firm that we used conducted additional community outreach, including meetings with members of our police department, the leadership of our police reform work group, HOA and civic associations, our faith community, and the leadership of our county council. We reviewed all of this information from the community and kept it at the top of mind as I conducted a thorough interview process to narrow down our candidates. I met personally with all of the finalists to make sure that we were choosing the right person to meet this critical moment in Prince George's County. And after this long and thorough process, I am very proud to announce today that I have selected Deputy Chief Malik Aziz, who is Deputy Chief for the Police Department in Dallas, Texas, to be our next Chief of Police and lead our police department into the 21st century. Deputy Chief Aziz has been with the Dallas Police Department for 29 years, rising through the ranks to serve in his current role as Deputy Chief. Through that time, he has held positions that allowed him to oversee a variety of divisions within the police department and touch almost every aspect of policing. One of the areas of Deputy Chief Aziz's background that particularly stuck out to me was his consistent focus and leadership in the area of community policing. As I mentioned, the ability to strengthen police and community relations was something we found early on, all of us, our residents. While our department has been working to strengthen ties between the community and the officers who patrol their streets, we know that there are improvements that can be made and will be made in helping us implement a comprehensive community policing model, as he is already a national expert in this field. Even more, while focused on community policing, he has also maintained a strong record of crime reduction in the divisions that he oversaw, which is something that is critical to our police department and our community. Deputy Chief Aziz also has leadership experience nationally as the former national chairman and executive director of the National Black Police Association. His leadership in the area of community policing also allowed him to serve as a presenter to the President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing, I'm told that he was so impressive during his presentation there, and that he has a quote that I'm sure he will share with us that earned him an invitation to meet with President Obama, who was so impressed with his thoughts and views and wanted to have a conversation with him. And so he is a national leader who has been recognized. Another area that was important in this election was making sure that our next chief of police would fully support the continued implementation of the 46 recommendations that came from our police reform task force that we announced earlier this year. And as I've said before, and I will say it again, we have an outstanding department filled with amazing men and women who come to work every day honorably to serve our community. However, we know, we acknowledge, we have never hidden from the fact that we also have very serious issues in our department, similar to other departments across the nation. And we are not afraid to address those issues and will continue to make our department even better. Deputy Chief Aziz has been a strong advocate for reform in his current role with the Dallas Police Department. And through his advocacy at the national level, I'm confident that he will continue working with us on these critical reforms that we are already implementing, and I know he will find additional ways to bring transformative change to our department. Overall, I believe that Deputy Chief Aziz will bring a fresh perspective to our department, and I truly cannot wait for Prince Georgians to get to know him. In the final round of interviews, I met personally with all of our candidates, getting to know them and asking them tough questions about why they wanted to serve Prince George's County and what they could bring to our police department. And I have to tell you that one of the things about the conversation that we had that really stuck with me, one that I will never forget, is in talking to Deputy Chief Aziz. He said that in this moment of reform in our country, that one of the goals that he had is that he wanted to be at the table, and that there were a number of departments across the country that he believed could reform policing in America in the years to come, and that he wanted to be at the forefront of those reforms, and that he believed that there were certain jurisdictions that would change policing in America forever, and believed that Prince George's County was one of the jurisdictions where that kind of change and reform could happen in policing in America. I thought that was something that really was profound, that he wanted to be a change agent, and so we are really just so grateful to have him here. And what I can tell you is that I was just blown away, I think all of us were, by Deputy Chief Aziz. He has all the qualities that our police department, and our community were looking for in our next chief of police. And I'll tell you that after that final interview, I was so convinced that he was the right choice and just wanted to move forward very quickly. Because we, of course, didn't want to lose him to other jurisdictions. He is sought after around the country. This is not an exaggeration. And so you see Deputy Chief Aziz strikes the perfect balance of both caring for the officers who are under his supervision and caring, and for the community members that he serves. He strives to make sure the best interests of the department and the community are always met because they are not mutually exclusive. Once Deputy Chief Aziz officially takes over, he has assured us that he will work hard to meet with our department and the community to get to know you and to earn your trust. And I know that once Prince Georgians and the men and women of our department have the chance to get to know him as I have, they will see why he is the perfect person to lead our police department to new heights. And before I wrap up, I would be remiss if I did not also extend my gratitude to Interim Chief Hector Velez, who will continue to serve in his role until Deputy Chief Aziz takes over on May 9th. I want to extend also my sincerest thanks to Interim Chief Velez for agreeing to serve as Interim Chief as we conducted this search process. He has been a dedicated member of this department and has served with honor and distinction during a truly unprecedented time. We have been incredibly fortunate to have him guide our department over these past 9 months, and want to thank him for his dedication and his service to our community. Now it is my pleasure to officially, well, actually, before we do that, I want to also thank, I'm joined today by the chair of our county council, Calvin Hawkins. I want to thank him for being with us, and also want to thank him for his input during this process, and thank him for his commitment. He is here today and will bring remarks, but certainly want to thank him and thank the council for their partnership. And following him, we will have remarks from our new chief, Chief Malik Aziz.
Good afternoon. I asked the chief, is there anything I should say when I go up there? He said, no. You had the privilege of meeting me. I had the honor of talking to you. Do you? County Exec Alsobrook, as you well know, the county council over these months have been in contact with you and your team about the next chief. You asked us to remain patient as you considered who you would select. As you talked to the community, you asked them to remain patient as you went through the process. Chief, what's great about Prince George's County is we have a county executive that the people believe in. You have a county exec that the council believe in, and it's been a great working partnership. So I stand here on behalf of the other 10 members of the county council to say welcome. We're looking forward to working with you, and we are so grateful to our county executive that she listened to the citizens of this county as well as our businesses and took into account some of the concerns of our police officers. And I just want to say we're looking forward to working with our next chief and want to thank Chief Velez for all the work he's done during this period. And I just want to say, lastly, Chief, we're looking forward to May the 9th and the opportunity as the county council to work with you and the county execs team to move our county forward in your leadership and your role as our next police chief. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. First, let me start by thanking the county executive. The process was long and very hard and challenging to come to the selection of myself, and I'm honored to receive that selection and stand before you today and accept it and be a part of the community in Prince George's County. The privilege is certainly mine. The honor is certainly mine for bestowing upon me and entrusting me with such a venerated police department. I want to also thank the team for facilitating the processes that I went through and making sure that I was well taken care of. I'm no stranger to Prince George's County. I know the county from friends of mine who live here and live in adjacent counties of the DMV, and they always take the opportunity to brag about Prince George's County. It's a shining star in the DMV, and I was very familiar with it over the past 2 decades, and I've been here multiple times. I never would have dreamed that I would have stood before you today accepting the position of police chief of Prince George's County. And again, I'm honored and I'm thankful to you, County Executive. So a few things I want to make sure that I convey, and it is about my background for police community relations. And police community relations have been very important to me for 3 decades in law enforcement, over 3 decades of working for a police department and a sheriff's department. And at every avenue, it has been really important to establish proper and positive community relations. 21st century policing is where we stand into this new environment, the landing to the county, to Prince George's County. With what I bring to the table from what the county executive mentioned before, I presented to the 21st Century Police Task Force and talked about the concepts and the environment in which police officers exist. And I made numerous statements nationally, and one of them was a statement that there's no us versus them, there's only us. And it grew, it grabbed the attention of President Obama, who did invite me to the White House. And I was there and having conversations. And for me, it was I would thought my mother would have never believed that I was actually having a conversation with the President of the United States. And that's what was on my mind. And that right there projected me and propelled me even further into community policing. We often talk about community policing and crime reduction. And to me, they are one and the same. They do not exist without the other, and they are not independent. And the community demands the right to be policed in a certain way, and we actually have to deliver that way to the community in which we serve, believing in public service and police service. I often refer to policing not as departments, and people hear me speak and I talk about joining the police service or giving a police service to the people. And I got that from, my father, and I got it from people who say it in the United Kingdom. And my travels in policing led me to the United Kingdom, where I interacted with high elected officials, the highest in the government, and association leaders there. And they commonly said what my father said: I'm joining the service, and this is the police service. And nothing is more important to me than public service. My mother being a school teacher for 25 years before her death, and public service runs through my veins, and I give it all to public service. My daughter is entering into nursing. My son is designed to be a teacher. So public service is very important to me. And I can tell from talking, because there hasn't been one conversation that I've heard the county executive say in the conversations about Prince George's County and the way she makes you feel and makes you fall in love with Prince George's County, that public service is at the forefront of the services that we deliver. And so I want the citizens and the officers of Prince George's County to understand what type of chief I will be. And that is one of communication, high visibility, one who listens, and one who will act with resolution to problems or issues or concerns that arise or that have been here. And my order is to maintain, establish, rebuild, reconstruct in every avenue, because there's no one way or one proper solution for us to have a positive result, and that is for Prince George's County to be the best in the nation. And I'm proud to say today that I'm considering myself a Prince Georgian. I got here as quick as I could. Thank you, County Executive, for getting me here as quick as you could. So I want to make sure that I am I'm reachable and I'm open, and I hear people. I often say that crime is not bureaucratic, community policing is not bureaucratic, public service is not bureaucratic. None of those things exist in a vacuum. They're not in a bottle, and you have to hear people, and you have to be there, and you can't expect people to come to you. You have to go to the people. And there are certain things in procedural justice that people deserve and respect, and I intend to treat people with that dignity and respect. It's sort of like the elders in my family come to understand. Treat them with dignity and respect, and when the problem arises, you give them a voice, in that problem, and you're always concerned about the relevant, factors, the relevant things that surround that problem, and you always make sure that you assist them in becoming part of the solution. And I always want to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. For the officers who I intend to serve, which I say I work for officers, and I do. I work for citizens and I work for officers. My intention is to make sure that we put officer safety and officer wellness at the forefront and mean it with reasonable action and make people feel valued in the workplace. The value is so important in today's climate that we don't talk at each other, we talk to each other, we talk with each other, and we have proper sender and receiver relationships that are incumbent on making our society a very safe society. Upon establishing those partnerships and the direction and the vision, which I'm sure I'll learn more of in the coming weeks and months and years that I intend to be in Prince George's County, then I'll lay the fabric, the groundwork, and sew things together to give us a clear direction on the direction that we will be taking the department, with the vision of the county executive and her team that I'm proud to be a part of such a venerated team, and we will produce the type of Prince George's County Police Service that we all will come to respect and know and appreciate. And with that, again, I just want to extend my graciousness for the acceptance, for entrusting me with such a great department, with a great task, and with great challenges. I'm looking forward to working with the police reform work group and interacting with that. And I'm honored to be before you today. And with that said, I know it's going to come a question because I'm in Dallas, Texas, and I just want to end with, yeah, that's the home of the world champion, 5-time world champion, Super Bowl champions, the Dallas Cowboys. You know, I just want to make sure I get that out there because I know some questions are coming. Thank you so much.
All right, well, thank you so much. And with that, we will take some questions from media. Tracy, please.
Yeah, so, Chief, you're coming from a department in Dallas where there is the FOP, there is the Hispanic law enforcement officers group, and also a Black law enforcement officers group. The same thing is here in Prince George's County. What are your feelings about that? The officers dividing in terms of race, and do you feel like that speaks to the culture of the department, or where do you stand on that?
Well, I think when organizations exist, because I've only known of one other person, a friend of mine who's chief in a South Texas city, who were members of all police associations. I joined every last police association to give me a voice in the room, because when things were being said, I wanted to be there. My relationships with police associations in the past, it helps me that I was local, regional, and national of police associations. And national counterparts I count as friends of mine. And although we don't always agree on the direction of law enforcement, we have been very respectable. So Prince George's County can have multiple groups of special interests. And special interest groups are needed only when you feel that main groups are not delivering the service in which you want, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm a believer in that, but I happen to believe that police officers generally want the same things, and they may use different avenues to get there. And that's the environment that was created in Dallas. I don't think any city, one city had more police associations than Dallas, Texas. At one time, we had 7 police associations and broken up across all demographics. And we worked with each other, and we met frequently. And that didn't mean that we didn't disagree and that we didn't have some fights, but we talked to each other. And even today in Dallas, they have fair amount of cordial relationships with each other. So it doesn't scare me. I think it puts me into a pole position to understand it even better. It allows me to understand the dynamics in which I came from in a very specific way. For those kinds of police associations or organizations. You know, Texas is a right-to-work state and exists for meet and confer agreements and not collective bargaining. So it's a different dynamic. But when you meet people on the grounds in which they expect to be met, and you hear them, and you actually can follow through, and we talk about the reason why police associations exist based on equity. And whenever you feel you have equity in the system, then generally.
Out of all the officers you looked at, you interviewed, you talked to, what made you select Chief Aziz from outside the region,
Yeah.
outside the state, halfway across country?
Oh, yeah, it was the perfect, the perfect combination of qualities. And one of the things that I will say about Chief Aziz is that I looked at his actions before I heard his words. Your record says everything about who you are over a 29-year career, unblemished, and his record was the thing that spoke most loudly to me. And so I knew through his actions who he was before I heard his words. And his actions, for me, were much more important than what he could say. He had already said it over 29 years of distinct service, where he rose from the very beginning, started as a sheriff's deputy, came in as a patrol officer. He will tell you that he feels most comfortable in a patrol car, a person who earned the respect of his colleagues, earned the respect of the community, contributed tremendously in terms of policy. And also, one of the things that I really liked about Chief Aziz was that he was a part of a department that had many of the challenges that Prince George's County has confronted, including violent crime, including also, he will tell you that Dallas City's police department is one of the most diverse in the country. And so he understands the challenges that exist there. He's dealt with major incidents in terms of having the officers who lost their lives. And I can tell you also, as I mentioned a moment ago, it was so persuasive for me to hear him say he understood that we were in a period of reformation, not just in Prince George's County, but in the country, and that he wanted to be a leading person to bring that change about in America. And I thought that that kind of forward thinking was tremendous. And coming from the outside, I have to tell you, was a tremendous asset. It was one in the end that also distinguished him, is that I thought we needed a fresh look, fresh eyes, fresh experience. And so I felt that it was also a great asset to have someone with his combination of experiences to come into Prince George's County and just be able to start completely fresh.
Scott, could you about what the executive just spoke about, which is your desire to participate in a moment in history in policing? Tell us about that, please.
Well, I look back, upon my life, and, I was sharing it earlier about the viewpoint of police. And many people coming from places I come from in Dallas, from the inner city, we looked up on police with the ground when I was a young man. And when you're young and you're looking at the police in a certain way, you're carrying on, when you're that young, you're carrying on the stories of your parents about what used to happen, or what did happen, or what could happen. And that has given us the great divide between police and community. Police were existing in a way, in a lot of ways, and even today, those ways are still prevalent, ways of distrust, not having any faith in the police department for a service. And so when I go back to talk about Reformation and knowing that we're in Reformation, I usually go back and look at these areas right here. And that is, we had a form of community policing for decades, but policing was adapting and evolving in the 1800s, in the 1840s and 1850s. And then it was evolving even with militarization, even in the 1950s, and UC Berkeley and the introduction of machine guns to actually combat the rising form of violence in organized crime violence in the upper Midwest and upper East Coast. So we were already in those forms, but when we get into this context, community policing comes in the 1970s, where the thought was already there when people go back to, it was foot patrols and police officers were walking around in a beat. That was out of necessity. So that was adaptation and reformation within itself, because technology gave way to better vehicles and transportation and traffic lights and better equipment and radios, and all those things came to the forefront, which changed our way we enacted or interacted with the community. So I get up to the first stage on what I look at, and being a part of the Reformation era now that we're in, but it just didn't really start there. After Rodney King in Los Angeles, when it happened in 91 and the riots in 92, it changed policing. And policing was changed because out west, police departments were progressive in a lot of strategic ways or tactics, and that changed us until we got up into 1997 with the shootings that happened out in Hollywood. And then that brought in a part of militarization, which was another change. And then we stayed in that for a few years until 9/11. and then we went into a Homeland Security Reformation for police, where resources were given to combat the rising threat of violence that will be coming from an enemy that would be foreign. And community policing, again, took a back step when it was on the forefront in 1992. And then comes the Michael Brown and Eric Garner incidents of 2014, right up on the heels of Trayvon Martin. And up on the heels of Trayvon Martin, out comes the Black Lives Matter, which in turn would not become a movement until Freddie Gray, right up in Baltimore. And so we've been in this form of Reformation era since then. And we'll say outright, 2013, 2014, people would disagree. So my take is to actually inject myself and policing into that era, because we've always been adapting and evolving. And we have to have a evolution where we have an interaction with the community in which way we will police the counties in which we serve, the jurisdictions in which we serve. And that enables me to bring to the table the things that have been put at the forefront in a national crisis. And the national crisis is police-community relations, that we have stopped talking to each other and with each other, and now we're just talking at each other, and we're not listening about what we want up along the lines of procedural justice and legitimacy and trust, and all of the things like the 58 recommendations that came out of the 21st century policing. And that is part of the Reformation era. And young officers are embracing the move forward because the officers that I know, they don't want to engage, and no one wants to have to take a life. No one wants to be involved in death and custodies and things that put your name in a newspaper or on the evening news or other things like that. And when I talk to people, the community, and what they tell me is that we just want to be treated with respect and dignity. We don't want, people to abuse us. We want people to talk to us and tell us what's going on. And that's not too big to ask. That's not too big of a demand for us to give. Because when I was a young man, I would have thought if that had occurred, I wouldn't have went the other way when the police showed up, or I would have embraced the police, service quicker than what I did. So that's why I really want to be involved into the Reformation. I think Prince George's County gives an opportunity for us to impact policing nationwide. While I do believe that policing is not, there's no such thing as national policing, I do believe all policing is local, but I believe local actions can actually form a blueprint and a foundation for positive policing with 19,000 police departments around this great nation.
You're encouraging a department that has had a lawsuit against it during its time, right, I guess right after, right before your predecessor left, there was a report that came out, officers stating that there's discrimination in the force, that there was retaliation for these discriminatory actions. It just seems like amongst the rank and file, there is some sort of disagreement about the way things are in the force. How do you intend to get officers in rank and file to see eye to eye, to work together, to maintain morale?
Yeah, part of that, and I understand that the lawsuit, I only know what I've read in the newspaper and, the things that have been told to me. So I can't comment on any specifics regarding that. What I can say is that we will produce an environment that is equitable, that every officer will have equity in this system. I told some officers this morning in my brief conversations with them individually is that I would be sitting down. I'll be sitting down with numerous work groups and numerous officers and hearing what they have to say, hearing about how they look at the department and the county in the past, in the present, and in the future, and what are their expectations into which they expect they should be valued inside of the police department. And so I can't, prescribe some, idealistic thought while I stand here at this lectern now. But when I talk to them and find out exactly what it is that of treatment that they've been given or they perceive, whether it is something that is perceived or reality, then I can go forth about what that is and what the end result would be to make the system more equitable. And we get caught into the inconsistencies of good procedures, and that happens with every police department around the nation. Something is good one week, and next week it's not, or 1 year it's good, and the next year it's not. And my goal is to make sure that we do these things on a consistent basis where every officer, employee, sworn, non-sworn, feels valued in that system.
Would you be interested in meeting with the people who have filed that lawsuit, the officers, the former officers who have filed?
Well, I'm gonna go out on the limb right here and say, I don't think that's proper right now. I think that has to, if the county executive would want me to, I would certainly do those things. But from my perspective, it's already has played out. It's played out into, such a ways. It's gone so far right now. And interjecting myself into that would probably be problematic. And so I don't think so. I'm interested in resolving the issues, some of the issues that were presented overall in a broad aspect, but interfering in something that is already going on right now would probably not be right and proper.
Last question, please. Brad?
What will the people of this community notice first about your leadership? What are they gonna see that's different? You can't know everything that's going on here, obviously, but, what are they gonna notice about you right away?
Well, they're going to notice that I'm going to be a partner in producing a high quality of public safety. They're going to notice that immediately, that they're going to see me, they're going to hear from me, and they're going to know that they have a police chief who they can call and contact and have a valued partner in that. So I think they'll notice that. I want to make that be very different from anything that's happened before, and if it's happened, I want to be better than that.
Okay.
I have a question for Helen. This is the final question. Do you have a message for the Hispanic and Latino community? And if you speak Spanish,
You don't want to hear my broken Spanish. But for the record, I did take 16 weeks straight of intensive Spanish, 9 hours a day for 5 days a week. And I was pretty good until they moved me from the Latino neighborhood. And so I haven't spoken it well since. But I will say this, I built bridges with the Latino communities in Dallas. Dallas is 45% Latino speaking, 30% Latino proper of Mexican descent in Dallas, Texas. So we have a very vibrant Latino community who I work well with. And I've been counted on in numerous places. I established crime watches that were Spanish speaking only. I delivered brochures and crime stats that were in Spanish, only to reach the segments. And we ran special programs in high volume, high population, high crime areas for Spanish speaking communities so we could get that message out. So in Dallas, Texas, people who operate with the greater Hispanic Chamber of Dallas, they will attest to it. People who work with ANITOS, officers who work in the program, they will tell you that I've been a friend of the Latino community, and I intend to deliver the same things here to the Latino community on their turf, on their terrain, on their ground, and not mine. So you can tell them that they have me, and I'll be working on my Spanish in the short term.
All right, thank you, Chief. Thank you, everyone, for coming.